Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to this meeting of the General Government Committee meeting. And if we could have a roll call, please.
Councilmember Dennehy, absent. Councilmember Gonzalez, absent. Councilmember Jaquez, absent. Councilmember Meisner, absent. Councilmember Reed, absent. Councilmember B. Smith,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick,
Here.
Mayor Smith.
Here.
Thank you. And our agenda tonight is a discussion, a review of an ordinance for the 2018 building and mechanical codes, and the resolution supporting the same. And so,
Yeah, I'll just kick it off before we turn it over to Kathy. This is something that we have been working on since the beginning of the year. Before COVID hit, we had a couple of meetings with the contractors and the fire department, and invited the county as well to make sure that we were all on the same page as you know, we're currently on the 2006 code. You know, that's 12 years behind as far as codes go. To be on a normal cycle, you're typically updating that code every 6 years. So we're twice as far behind as we should be right now. And you know, we're looking at the 2018 code. Kathy has done a great job going through and working on this, and continuing to stay engaged with the fire district and the county, but also with the contractors as well during this time. We weren't able to meet as groups, but I know when she was out meeting with contractors one-on-one, she was keeping this at the top of their mind, asking questions and answering questions as we were going through this. So I just want to acknowledge Kathy and all the hard work that she's done on this, and you know, turn it over to Kathy to talk about some of these changes, and Catherine as well. Catherine has done a lot of work on this as well, on the legal side.
okay, and Kathy, before you start, maybe you could share with us a little bit about exactly how the process worked, not so much the meetings and things like that, but you had a code book and you were reading it and you were comparing that to our current code. Could you explain that a little bit, please?
Yes. So what happens in the process is you have to read throughout all of the code books that you're going to adopt. In our case, I think there's 8 different code books that we're going to adopt, because some of them have separated off a little bit. Some are new. We haven't adopted, just using as an example, that we are on the 1994 Uniform Housing Code. We are going to change to the 2018 Property Maintenance Code. So it's a big jump from the 94 to the 18. Most all the other codes were on the 2006, so it was just a transfer to see what's new, what's beneficial. Is there anything that we need to take out? There is a lot of structural requirements for the design of our area, snow loads, wind loads, soils. So there's a lot of investigation. I worked together with CCC's engineer, and we went through everything to make sure the criteria fits Canyon City's design.
Thank you.
In the process tonight, I don't know if you want to go through the whole ordinance or if you want me to touch base on just the major changes. I know a lot of the updates in this have to do with administration, and it's throughout each section of the code book. What would be beneficial?
I'm not sure, does anyone have an opinion on that, or? You mentioned that there were 6 code books that you had to go through, and they were gas, mechanical, plumbing, property maintenance.
Actually, we have the building code, and this takes you through each one. We have the existing building code. We have the residential code. which this time in the residential code, we're doing it a little bit different. The residential code is self-contained. It has everything from building, mechanical, fuel, gas, energy, electrical, and plumbing in it. So we're basically adopting the whole code so people can use it specifically for 1 and 2 family dwellings. Or if somebody was to come in and build, let's say, a townhome, a row home of 6 units, they could still use the residential code. So that's one of them. Let's see, we're going to have the mechanical code, the fuel gas code, property maintenance code, swimming pool and spa code, and the energy conservation code. And I think that pretty much covers all the code books. We also have the fire code, which the fire department will adopt, but they will adopt it by resolution, and we also adopt it in our code. There will be some changes to this ordinance because we have to wait for the fire department to adopt their resolution on October 12th. Once that is completed, then Catherine will change this to update it to the 2018 International Fire Code before our ordinance goes to actual council for first reading.
I did have a question. I did do some reading through here, and in section 109, IFGC, that's the International Fire General Code, would that be?
Fuel gas code.
Fuel gas code. So that's, and it's talking about means of appeal. And it has it establishes a board appointed by the chief. And that's the fire chief, would that be who the chief is?
Catherine, are you talking about the International Fire Code or the Fuel Gas Code?
So we don't have page numbers, but I'm looking in section 109 and means of appeal. With me, it's,
Catherine's talking, but we can't hear her.
oh. Can you say something to us, Catherine, so we can tell if we can, no, we're not hearing you yet. We're working on the technical end here. Do you see where I am, Kathy?
Yeah, and we're talking about the municipal code in section 1093, it's number A there.
No. 109.
What page are you on, John?
Like I said, I don't have page numbers here in the first part.
Okay.
So it's about halfway through.
Okay, let me get to the IFGC, maybe you are on the fuel gas code.
So the sections in front of it are, it talks about stud cavity, violation penalty, stop work, Department of Inspection, and means of appeal.
Okay, and the means of appeal is the procedure, or are we talking this one?
Say something again, Catherine.
No, not yet. Hey, you could just write it on a paper and hold it up, you know.
So So what was the question on the means of appeal? I know each one of them
Sure.
have a section on means of appeal.
I had two questions, and one is, it says the chief is appointed by the chief. And so that, I'm assuming that means the fire chief?
If
Who-
it's in the fire code,
Yeah, IFGC, so I would assume that's the fire chief?
I thought the whole thing was pretty messed up.
the fire department has their own board of appeals.
But we're writing regulations that they're going to adopt, is that right? No, that's not right. Okay.
Oh, poor Catherine.
This is, are we close?
And she has more knowledge than I do on how it works between the fire department and our code.
So that was
We're
a,
adopting the code because it's, the code version itself is regulated within the city limits.
yes. And I was just asking about the chief to make sure I understood that part, but my concern is that the qualifications for the 5 board members are people that we probably don't have here in Canyon City.
Oh, the special ed.
Yes, because it's a registered design professional who's a registered architect or builder or superintendent of building construction, not less 10 years experience, registered, and a registered design professional with structural engineering, architectural, and a registered design professional, fuel, gas, and plumbing engineering experience. So, yeah, sure, Catherine.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. So, with the exception of the fire code and the plumbing and electrical codes, and we can talk about those special circumstances in a bit, all of those sections, all of those means of appeals and boards of appeals are all being removed. And it is referring to the city's current board of appeals. And John, you hit on exactly why we're advocating doing that is because we do not want to locate people with all these qualifications. And we want to use the board, sorry, I should say the Board of Adjustment. They all go to the Board of Adjustment. So all the appeals go to the city's current Board of Adjustment.
Great, that answers my question, and that's good, because by consolidating it that way, that's a lot better, and there were some pretty steep, experience or professions or disciplines requirements there for those people. Okay,
So, I have a
And in
question.
regards to the fire code, it's actually the opposite of what you described. So the fire department approves the 2018 fire code with their amendments, and we just adopt that code with their amendments. So they're really the ones controlling what goes into that code. And they have their own board of appeals, as Kathy mentioned.
okay.
So if we are totally taking that out of our code, why is it in the paperwork? I'm a little confused in our paperwork because it reads like it is.
Okay, so this paperwork, this first paperwork
Yeah,
is what's in the actual code book. And then the ordinance, I just gave you both. I gave you what was the section in the code book and what we were amending in the ordinance, so you could refer back and forth.
Oh,
That's what that is. This here is actual language in the code book
this,
that we're changing in the ordinance.
okay.
okay, so then I
So-
have to find what.
So we go to the ordinance then to actually look at what,
Kathy, do you want to give part of your presentations? Like, did you have a PowerPoint for us, or?
I don't have a PowerPoint. I didn't know if you wanted to go through the ordinance, if you wanted to go through one section. That is why I gave you the actual code information. A lot of it is redundant throughout each code book because it's administration, like the title, referenced codes. We can walk through all of it if you'd like. I mean, that's strictly up to you.
John?
Yes, sir.
I think my questions start a little more general. And one, we had talked about some communication and coordination with local contractors relative to these changes.
Yes.
I would like, tell me how that process worked and what was all involved there.
So we started out in October 19th, or not October, it was October 29th and 19. We had our first contractor meeting to start the process
October when?
of 29th of 2019.
Okay.
We had 24 people attend at that meeting. Then we had another meeting January 15th of 2020, which we had about 40 people that attended. That was the second meeting. And then we were going to have a demonstration in March of 2020 for a fire sprinkling system that the fire chief was going to put on, and that got canceled due to COVID-19. We were not able to have our June contractor meeting because of the fact of COVID-19. I have reached out, been out in the field, talked to all the contractors. They are all on board. Their biggest issue was no fire sprinkling systems in single and two-family dwellings. We have deleted that in the ordinance, so if you
Okay.
build more than two, like if you build three or more,
Right,
then you
okay.
would have to sprinkle, but single-family dwellings, two-unit dwellings, you do not have to sprinkle. That's been cut out of the code book.
So a triplex, three or more, a triplex or bigger would require sprinkling?
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wasn't there another item that, in the code that was controversial?
Well, how about the air exchange?
The blower door test, it's energy code. There's a lot of state legislation on that, and we're not able to just remove things out of the energy code. Catherine, would you like to touch base on that a little bit?
We're not able, or?
I don't think that was too
So
controversial.
when you adopt, now, this is a recently passed law, I think last year, when you adopt a new building code, you have to adopt the energy code that goes with it. And so you are not allowed to delay the effectiveness. I think the issue was and please correct me, Kathy, if I say anything incorrect here, the blower door test could be delayed for 9 months, and that is not permitted under that statute, and your home rule authority does not give you the right to preempt that statute. It is a matter of statewide concern.
One of the things that we saw or heard from the contractors about the blower door test was the fact that we didn't have anybody locally to actually do that, and the contractor to do the blower door, or the person that would do the blower door test would be coming from Colorado Springs or Pueblo. I think we've since remedied that. We do have somebody that is willing to do it locally, and they're going to go get licensed and certified to do that. So one of those big concerns that we heard from the contractors regarding blower door tests, I think we have addressed.
Also, on the blower door test information, the 2021 code book came out with better language to help out for 1,500 square foot and less homes. So I've adopted that, changed that, took the old version out, put the new version in. That way, it'll help our contractors when they're building a 1,500 square foot home or less. For air exchanges, it helps them out on their rate.
What were some of the other changes that were made? Because I'm having a really hard time following between the first section and the second section and matching it up and.
I'm gonna go back to where her original question was. It seems to me like, from my perspective, now that I know a little more and have had some overview of this meeting, I think I just need to study it. And then I'm gonna trust that whatever changes we're making, for the most part, have had the blessings of our contractors.
They have.
John?
And they've even been discussed between the county and the fire department, so everybody is on board as well.
And the, so let me ask a question about that, Kathy. Have we, or maybe Ryan, have we let the contractors know that this meeting was going to be held tonight?
Yes.
And so the fact that, that's probably a good sign, that there's not an angry crowd out there with pitchforks.
Yes.
Well,
So,
I disagree.
Or there
so
are
we
some
we
people-
informed them last week, the week before also. And then this, yesterday, we sent reminders that this meeting was going on. So
Yeah.
there were 3 different times we sent out communications letting them know that this meeting was going on. We also, asked for people to speak, and we did not receive any requests to speak at this meeting. As I stated at the beginning, we've done a lot of public outreach to the contractors, trying to make sure that their concerns are being addressed with this code update.
Yes.
What did you call that? You said blow door?
Blower door test.
Is that N 1102.4.1.2? Okay,
Yes.
okay.
And the new information, if you look on page 10, Jim, there's an exception added to that. The first section under that, all the way down to number 6, that's the original in the 2018. But in the 2020, they've added an exception where it helps for air leakage, not exceeding a certain amount for buildings or dwelling units that are 1,500 square foot or smaller.
How do they test that?
They have to close the whole house off.
Right.
And then they have a special meter that sits in the middle, and it pressurizes, and they have to meet a certain air exchange. It's mechanical ventilation is what they're trying, because they're making houses tighter now. So when the house is tighter, you want to be able to breathe inside of your house. And this says, okay, my house meets the criteria, so I don't have to bring in any extra mechanical ventilation into my home.
So it's sealed, but it's not sealed.
Correct.
So let me understand too, if we look at the packet that we've been provided, which is in 2 parts, the old wording and the new proposed wording after the resolution language. So if we look at page 4 of the first part, and I'm looking at where it's talking about exceptions for roofs, it's 1511.3.1.1 exceptions. And that's
Right.
about 4 pages back. And-
Yeah, okay.
You with me, Kathy?
Yep, I know which one you're talking about.
Okay, and so that says there are 3 exceptions, or I want to say it correctly. A roof recover shall not be permitted when any of the following three conditions occur, and list 3 conditions. And then if we go to page 3 of the revised language, right there in the middle, it says K, section 1511.3.1.1. And it says exceptions. Number 3 of the adopted code is hereby amended to read as follows: where the existing roof has 1 or more applications of any type of roof covering. And that's changing it from 2 or more applications.
From
So-
2 to 1. Only 2 to 1.
So we can no longer cover an existing roof. It has to be all new roof.
Correct. That's how it was always in the 2006 as well. It's only, the 2006 didn't allow you to overlay. In our jurisdiction, we have a lot of old homes that don't even meet rafter spans. Here lately, we've had a lot of tear-offs. Some of those places have 6 layers of roofing on them, which I'm sure people have done it without permits over and over. But a lot of those older homes, the spans are overspan, and when you start overlaying a roof, you put a lot of weight on that roof, on top of any snow or weight that could happen to be on that.
Sure. But my question concerns going from as I understand it, the old language allowed you to have an original roof cover and then cover it over one time. And then after that, you had to do all new roofing. The
So-
old language.
The old, yeah, the original language.
The new
in
language says, it has to be a new roof every time.
Correct.
Yeah, and Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick, there's actually 3 sections here. So you have a resolution with the fee schedule, you have the ordinance making the changes.
Yes.
And then that cover memo that Kathy has on there, that's actually the 2018 code that we're taking out or amending. It's not the 2006 code that's changing.
This is 18.
Yeah, all of it is 18. So that does not,
So,
that's not current conditions as of today, because conditions today are 2006
Yeah,
codes.
but Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick is saying that it appears that we're making the 2018 code even more strict
yes.
by not allowing at least one overlay.
We are, because that's what it is in the 2006 right now, because we're in a hail region. Right now in the 2006, you can't overlay. We've been doing it that way since 2006.
In Canyon.
In Canyon, you cannot overlay on a roof right now. If you want a roof on your home, you can't overlay, you have to tear it off. It's been that way since we adopted the 2006.
And why, and explain that again?
In the 2006, we're in a high hail region.
What's that got to do with it?
It's part of the code. They go
I mean, what's
through.
the relevance of hail with weight load? I fail to grasp that connection, other than the fact that we're going to put more roofs on, but I don't understand the relationship with hail and weight load.
They don't have the hail region district in the 2018 code book anymore.
So why should we?
Well, I know, but I don't understand the relevance of hail with the load bearing of a roof.
Or new roofing.
Yeah, it's a replacement roof. But that's how it was worded in the 2006 code book. You could not overlay because
Okay.
you were in a hail region.
Which we're getting rid of, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so 2006 in my mind is irrelevant. I just can't believe. And the roofing contractors are okay with this?
Most
Obviously,
roofing
because they're making more
contractors-
money.
Sure.
Most contractors that are roofers do not want to overlay. For one, most of them can't hit any of the boards when they're nailing, and so people have drooping shingles when they're trying to overlay. Most generally, they don't lay down nice, so most roofing contractors will not overlay. I don't even have people asking me to overlay, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I would still like to highlight some of the changes, because it's hard for me to follow from, because they're both big documents of deciphering, okay, where are the changes? Nothing's highlighted, nothing's red marked, nothing's
Right,
asterisked.
I agree with that.
Nothing,
Is
so it's
that-
hard to determine, okay, what's the difference between 2018 and the ordinance that we're doing?
I mean, had John not picked that particular verbiage, I would have never known that there was that change.
I can walk you through all of the changes, if that'll help.
Yeah, but I don't know that I want to sit here for 3 hours while you do that.
Well, a lot of these I don't think you need to go through because they're like title, building department, temporary power, which is gonna be the state, schedule of permit fees, which is gonna be in our resolution, Board of Appeals, which we've already talked about.
Just the meaningful meat.
Yeah.
Right, so I will just kind of walk through here. In section 1608 of the building code, that there is just telling what our design criteria is for snow loads in our area.
So wait, are we on the 2018 original
on the
or on the
ordinance.
ordinance?
I'm
What
going
Well,
with the
page?
ordinance.
This is page 3 then.
Yes. I'll just walk through the pages of the ordinance and the changes, and then if you have questions, we can go back to this and see what the actual verbiage is out of the 2018 code book.
Oh, well, all right, there's a light bulb for me. So this isn't the 2006, the front part is not the 2006,
No,
it's the
it's
2018.
yes.
And that is the ideal model code that we have made amendments to adopt for our community as per what we think our community standards are in consultation with the contractors.
Correct.
Which resulted in this document,
Yes, the page numbered document.
the resolution or whatever.
Yeah, so now.
The bill.
now I think, so I think that for me helps understand, if these are, what we have here on the numbered pages are the proposed changes.
Right.
And so but nonetheless, it still is hard to evaluate them. We don't have a really good way to evaluate them because 2006 is not going to be comparable almost in any form or fashion to 2016, okay? And so to try and do a red line against the 2006 would end up with everything red, really, probably.
Correct, and that's why we provided the two documents, because there was no way to do a red line or comparison in this exercise.
Yes, I understand. So what we've got is we have model language and our proposed language based on our interactions, the city's interactions with contractors, to try to get something that works for us, that is not overly prescriptive.
Correct.
Does that make sense?
Yes, but I would still like to go over the major
Yes,
meat of
so
the
let's
changes.
do,
Okay, so number M is section 1609.3 of the code. And this here has to do with our basic wind design. And then if you go to page 4, the 3 bullets there, that is our basic wind design for the IBC in our area. The established flood hazard, that's just information that gives you that we are going to be going by the Federal Emergency Management Agency in an engineering report entitled The Flood Insurance Study for Fremont County, Colorado and Incorporated Areas, dated July 3rd, 2012. Then we have penalties, which is going to revert back to section 128 of the municipal code. The existing building code, there's really not a lot of amendments out of there. That's just major or minor stuff with the Board of Appeals, schedule of permit fees, the building department, the title. In the residential code, I'm going to adopt Appendix J, which is the existing buildings and structures. And
what page are you on?
6.
6.
Under the residential code, chapter 15.04. We will be adopting Appendix J, which is the existing buildings and structures. Appendix K, which is sound transmissions, which have to do with firewalls and fire barriers. And Appendix M, which is you can establish home daycare, and an R3 occupancy, which is a residence. Again, this section R101 is just the title of the code adopted by Canyon City. Modifications again to the flood hazard areas, which will revert back to Title 21 in the code. And 103 is just establishing the building department. Section 105, exception number 2 under the building code, that has to do with 7-foot tall fences.
I didn't
We-
understand that.
Okay, so if you go back to this one here, under section 105.2.
I mean, the way I underread that is if you got a foot that's over 7 foot, it doesn't apply? Or there's no?
No, we're deleting that whole section because we permit fences for planning and zoning. It's a code requirement. In the actual code book, it says that these items are exempt from any types of permits. And it lists out like 10 or 12 items. And number 2 is fences not over 7 feet high. Well, we're taking that out completely because we do permit fence permits.
Where's that at? What page? You got it?
7.
Yes. And it's number E from the top, page 7,
Page 7 of
for
this
the
one here.
fences.
No, but where does it say fence?
So it says so back in the first section, under section R 103, Department of Building Safety, which is about 5 or 6 pages back or so, it says R 105.2, work exempt from permit. Permits shall not be required for the following fences not over 7 feet in height. So we're deleting that.
So it's not there. That's why it's so confusing to go from one to the other.
Yeah, but you said item E on page 7. Says section
Yes.
R 108 is hereby amended to read.
No.
That's below that. I thought you were talking about R 105.2 exception
it's F.
2.
I'm sorry,
F.
I misquoted. It's number F. R 108.5 is hereby deleted. That's the requirement or the exemption for fences under 7 feet.
R 105. And that's that section that says,
It's 108.5.
108.5.
108.5 is refunds.
I was going to say 108.5.
Yeah, we're on D.
Well, and in the 2018, it doesn't have, on our copy, there isn't a 108.5.
No, but 105.2, that's the
105.2,
requirement
sorry.
for fences. And the first section, 105.2.
Okay, but just for example, let's say that I did have a question about item F. It says section 108.5 of the code is hereby deleted. When I look at the when I look at the 18 code, I don't find a 108.5. I see 108.2.
No, it's right there,
It's right there,
below.
refunds.
Yeah, refunds. The building official is authorized to establish a refund policy. That's deleted.
But that's 108.6.
0.5.
No, 6.
It's 6.
That's it.
I
right
got
here.
5.
Mine says 109.6.
Huh?
So I'm right above section R 112 Board of Appeals.
Right,
Yeah.
and mine says
Same here.
108.6.
Uh-oh. We have
And it
different
says
documents.
refunds? Mine says 109.6.
You need to be above our 112.
Which I am.
No, that's just section 12. Section R 112.
Okay. Ay, ay, ay. Okay,
So-
John, you're correct,
see where-
honorable chair. I'm going like, John, you are losing it there.
Okay.
I was
found
right
it
with
Did you
you.
see it?
Yeah, I felt better when Ashley stepped in and went, what is this? Okay. So, I don't even remember where I found, because I had a question, a note on my other thing about the 7-foot rule, which
We don't
the
allow
18
7.
code
Five.
is saying that 7-foot fences are not part of the code, but we're saying we're gonna delete that because they are part of the code. Is that correct?
Correct.
So if we want to build a 3-foot fence, we have to get a permit.
No, if you
Correct.
wanna build a 7'5" fence.
No, it's.
No.
In
Below
planning and
7.
zoning, it's
No,
not
Seven
it's
foot.
allowed.
over 7.
Catherine has something to say.
So the way that the 2018 code reads, okay, without any changes, is that it, as Kathy mentioned, it has a whole list of things that are exempt from a permit. And it says fences under 7 feet, I believe. Fences not over 7 feet. So the fences that are 7 feet and under are exempt from a permit under the building code.
Right.
Canyon permits all fences. So we're deleting that exception so that all fences are subject to a permit.
Right.
So it's
So
it's
again,
not
we're
part of
being-
the building code, it's part of the municipal code, and that's why it's being deleted.
So So, and it's another instance of us being more strict than the 2018 building code.
It's under Title 17 in the code, under the Planning and Zoning Code. Fences are done through there.
And so what portion of that 17 are we trying to legislate or regulate? The height of a fence?
I don't, all I do is issue permits for planning and zoning under whatever their fence requirements are. They have to sign off on the permit.
Who's they?
Planning and
Patrick
zoning.
Mulready.
So what is the motivation for the municipal code to require permits on all fences?
And Patrick's not here to answer that. That's been in the code. One is clearances, front yards. A lot of people would like to put 6-foot-high tall fences in their front yard.
But you still do waivers.
I don't know that they do.
No, with the setbacks, we send them to the Board of Adjustments if there's something along those lines.
I mean, I've seen fences right next to the street. 6-foot privacy fences that are right next to the street that have been built recently with a building permit. So somebody's letting somebody do something, because that's not in compliance. Right?
Not to my knowledge, it isn't.
You would know.
I don't approve them, I don't. All I do is issue the permit, Jim. When we get the actual application in with the site plan, it goes to Patrick Mulready. Once he approves, or a lot of times I know he calls whomever it is putting the fence up because it doesn't meet. He makes his notations, I issue the permit, and the person picks it up.
So,
And we did have one recently that was along the street that was approved by the Board of Adjustments.
Well, who regulates that? I mean, who checks
What?
the fence?
We do if we get called for a final. The building department does.
so you're asking about the fence height or the setback?
Either way, they're the same.
Okay, well, so when I moved here in 2005, we bought a house, okay? And it had an existing 3-foot, I'd call it hog wire, decorative hog wire
Right.
fence, which wasn't suitable for the dogs that we had at the time. They could easily jump over that. So we hired a fence contractor who went to the city. We had to get a permit to put up the fence, and we had to establish an agreement with the city, because essentially we were building in their right-of-way. And so we have an
Variance.
agreement with the city that says we can have our fence right at the curb, but we're in the city's right-of-way, and if they ever say move
Move
it,
it.
we have to move it,
Right. I understand that,
yeah.
I think. I mean, I understand the concept, but, so the building department issues a permit for a fence, and the zoning department approves the structure of the fence and the height, but then nobody actually checks it.
We do if we get called for final. We go out and
Like
do
I
it.
said, nobody actually checks it.
Only if we're called.
Who does the
Who would call
calling?
you?
The homeowner or the contractor saying the fence is complete, could you final it for us?
Is
And
that
we
a
do get a
requirement?
lot of calls.
So tell me if I understand this correctly. Essentially, when you issue a permit, it has an expiration date.
Correct.
All right, and so if a permit that's issued has expired, what happens?
Right now, they're just going through the pipeline. They're never final.
So really what kind of, if I understand what Councilman Meisner is asking, so if you have someone that builds a fence and just lets the permit expires and never requests a final inspection, there's no final inspection.
Correct.
And there's no trigger to make that final inspection happen.
There is not. We are trying to be better with that. With the amount of staff that we have, there's a lot to track there for finals. We have roofing to track down for finals, but here lately, we have been tracking down fences. We do watch fences and how they are being built when they are issued. to make sure that they're within their height regulations. There are some addresses that are real funny in Canyon. Some of them are a corner lot, but their front lot may be on Sixth Street instead of Harrison. So it makes it look like that they put a 6-foot fence in their front yard when really it isn't, it's their backyard. So there are different areas in town that do make it look like, hey, that person put up a 6-foot tall fence in their front yard, wouldn't, they really didn't. But we have a few right now that are in violation, and code enforcement are working on them for planning and zoning. One is on, I don't remember the exact street, on College, and and maybe that's one you're referring to. It's 5 foot tall in the front yard.
No. Yeah, that whole process just seems weird. And why is zoning involved?
It has to do with the setbacks and making sure that, the fence that is going in according to municipal code and height requirements and everything is appropriate, especially for the front yards.
But that's planning and zoning the department, not the commission.
Correct.
And the reason that is because we over the past years have decided to inject fence regulations in municipal code. Is that right?
Yeah, it is part of the code, the municipal code.
When you say we, that was somebody before our time.
Well, we're doing the same thing. I mean, we tried to do it. I mean, every time something comes up, we want to add it to code so that we can't do that. So we're not any less
Well, in the
guilty.
20 years I've been here, almost 21 years, Jim, it's been there ever since I've been here, so. I don't know how long before that it was
Well,
there.
I guess I just assumed, obviously incorrectly, you gave me some information relative to a fence, and I assumed that information was coming from code enforcement or building. I don't even know how to say this now. I assumed it was coming from you and not from zoning, but it's not. It's actually came from zoning,
Mhm,
right?
correct.
So, okay.
And it comes from zoning because of the size of the lot and.
Well, it comes from zoning because it's in code.
Right.
Well, there's vision clearances coming out of alleyways. We have a lot of alleyways that don't meet vision clearances, so
Right.
people
I
have to-
understand some of those things, I think,
And
that,
being on corner lots and, like I say, people putting 6-foot tall fences in their front yards.
well, you can to a certain point, right?
4 foot, 50% open in the front yard. 6 foot high in the backyard.
Okay.
So really, there's been kind of a, I don't know if I want to call it a synergism, but a connection between model building codes and what the city has done. And because with the model building codes, it's really a moving target. I mean, every 6 years is what you said, that they should be reviewed, because things change in that time. And so, in addition, we've got the other overlay that you were referencing, Jim, which is certain conditions came before council or the planning commission or city staff that created some problem that needed to be resolved in some fashion. There was some controversy that needed to be resolved. And so we've got, so we get changes from the other side too, where there's a controversy, council make changes to the code, and we go from there. And so really your every 6 years review is your chance to maybe look at some of those, things that have been, kind of the ad hoc type regulations rather than coming from a council somewhere who's looked at all the issues and said, this is the best way to go about it. But so hopefully that's what we're getting here. I'm not sure myself, but. So let me ask the question that way then. So as you went through the new code and compared it to our existing code, were you able to identify areas where our code was too strict and we needed some relaxation there? Or because we've got it in our code, we want to keep it forever? That's a trick question.
That's a real trick question. Because code is there for safety reasons.
Sure.
It's to protect the public.
Mhm.
It's the life safety issues. Fence, no, that's not a life safety issue. That's why code exempts that information.
Except for line of sight.
Yeah.
But as far as life safety goes, there's actually some new things that allow people to do different ways instead of just one way that really gives you some lenience. So people have some options there now. But they're still life safety. They're still working as life safety. I wouldn't say that it's more restrictive. Energy code has been, I can't say it's more restrictive because it does help out on energy bills when people really look at their bottom dollar for energy bills. Maybe paying, and I'm just using this as an example, $1,000 extra for higher R value of insulation. It might save you $1,000 in probably 2 years' time. So if you're living in that house for 10 years, that's a big savings.
That's a big savings.
And I remember
Understand.
in the meetings with the contractors, they weren't too concerned about the energy
Mm-mm.
saving regulations.
Most of them are doing the
They're doing it
energy code
already.
criteria now because our insulators come from Pueblo and Colorado Springs, and they've been on the newer codes for quite some time now. So it's nothing new. So any more questions on the fences?
Yeah, but this isn't the place to address them.
All right, let's keep going.
1082 is just scheduled permit fees. 1085 was the refund policy. Section 202, this, I'm adding a new definition, and the reason being is for the new blower door testing. That actually gives your enclosed area of the definition of what the area is for testing on your blower door.
Can you
And that-
tell us a page number, please?
That's on page 7 of the actual ordinance.
Wait a minute,
That's number G,
number what?
Okay. G.
letter G.
Any questions on that? Okay. And then R 112, again, is just the Board of Appeals and what procedures. And then our climatic and geographic design criteria. This table is in the actual code book, but you have to fill in your design criteria for the design and the manual J, which is part of the mechanical code and fuel gas code and the energy code. Manual J is what designs your HVAC system. And so all of those designs are to the Canyon City area. The footnotes remain unchanged. And then R 3023, the reason that I changed the language a little bit, this language is in the 2021. And we have a lot of areas that are taking apartment buildings now, and they're wanting to make them into condos and sell them separately. This gives definition that such separation shall be provided regardless of whether a lot line exists between the two dwelling units or not. So that's the only piece of the language that was added to the existing language. But that provides the separation then to be able to sell that unit to somebody instead of one person owning the whole building and renting each unit out. 313.2 is the fire sprinkling systems that's been deleted for 1 and 2 family dwellings. Soils testing. This is the soils testing criteria that right now we use and that's in place. And this just explains the information that has to be on the soils report that's required for a new foundation design. There is an exception, and that's 800 square feet of floor area, any type of accessory detached garage. Some sheds are 800 square feet. They would be exempt from having to have a soils investigation done by a soils engineer. The weep screeds, the only thing that has changed here is it goes from 2-inch to 1-inch, which is going to be less restrictive. We've had some old history with that, and it's always been decided, instead of being 2 inches up off the ground, a weep screed is the bottom part of a stucco stop. So where your stucco ends at the bottom, it should be 2 inches above the pavement or concrete or whatever. A lot of contractors did not like that because it showed too much, especially when they were building new homes. So we have always gone with 1 inch, and they were very happy with that. So I'd like to keep it at that. And that's the only change in that section. 9083, again, has to go back to 1 or more roof. The existing one says where the existing roof has 2 or more applications of any type of roof covering. And this one, we changed to where the existing roof has 1 or more applications of any type of roof covering. So,
On that weep screed, is that 4 inches above earth? Is that normal? I mean,
Yes.
is that in current code?
yes.
And that verbiage is acceptable where it says paved?
Correct. Paved areas can be concrete, pavement. It's
Is
basi-
paved defined somewhere else?
I don't think so. I don't.
Or is
it
that
in-
subjective?
Is it in exceptions, Catherine? I didn't bring the book down. with me.
Okay.
I don't know.
I know
I-
we have always considered paved as either concrete or pavement.
We
'Cause
can
I'll-
certainly look if it's defined in the code, but I don't know off the top of my head.
It's gotta have a definition in there.
Is there something you'd like added in there, or?
No,
Oh.
I see that it's 4 inches for earth and
Mhm,
1 inch for paved areas.
mhm. Okay.
And it seems odd, but if the contractors want 1 inch and 1 inch is acceptable, isn't that also determined by some insurances also?
That part I don't know as
I
far
mean,
as.
isn't that a
insurance.
termite limitation?
Not to my knowledge, but it
Really?
could be.
I thought that, I thought that gap was also a termite control.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Okay, so now on the roof portion, do we have any questions on that part? Where we're keeping it to 1 application? And then the next part has to do with the blower door test, where we added the extra verbiage in there to help out with small dwelling units. And then section 16011, parts of the code was good, and parts of it missed it. when they were adopting the code, you can't use stud wall cavities and floor joists cannot be used for supply or return air anymore. They just forgot to change section 7, and that's all that we are changing.
When you say they, you're talking about the 2018 building code?
Yeah, International Code Council missed. They have a section in the actual code book that says you cannot use cavities as such. But then when they went through the code, they have certain sections with certain things, and they just were not changed, so they were kind of all working against each other. So this is just correcting the section.
And you're correcting that error, you're correcting that stud cavity in this section
Yes.
under, that doesn't seem to make sense, does it?
Well, the original says stud wall cavities and spaces between solid floor joists to be used as air plenum shall comply with the following conditions. Then it gives all the conditions. These cavities or spaces shall not be used as plenum for supply air. These cavities or spaces shall not be part of a required fire-resisted rated assembly. Stud wall cavities shall not convey air from one floor
Right.
then another floor level. Stud wall cavities and joist spaces plenum shall be isolated from adjacent concealed spaces by tight-fitting fire blocking according to 6028. And then 7.5 says stud wall cavities in the outside walls of building envelope assemblies not be utilized for air plenums. So now section 7 will just be that stud wall cavities and spaces between solid floor joists shall not be used as plenums for supply or return. Any questions on that one?
So you're telling me that all of those conditions are removed and replaced just with 7?
Correct.
Wasn't there also one in there that talked about external wall
Yes.
as not being a
Well, just number 7 will change. Not 7.1, 7.2, 7.3, 7.4, and 7.5.
Here's the,
what page is
it's not numbered. We really need to have numbers.
it? That's why
It
I
need to be
spend more
numbered
time
as a
backtracking.
2018 one and resolution one.
I guess, Mr. Chair, I spend more time trying to figure out where I'm at or where I need to go than I am actually concentrating on the specifics of it. The format of this whole thing, however that is, and I realize it's massively confusing, we need to work on something that, I mean, like, we're on M7. How do I find that section in the 18 code? I gotta go back to the start and figure out where item 7 is in this 18 code. Every time I find it, I'm so frustrated, I don't even know why it got there. I stumbled across it by accident here.
So I do have a question there. Let me ask my question, but, so we've got in the 18 code, M 1601.1.1, above-ground duct systems. Above-ground duct systems shall conform to the following, and then it's number 7. Stud wall cavities, spaces between solid floors to be used as air plenums shall comply with the following conditions. We're replacing that with stud wall cavities and the spaces between solid floors, floor joists shall not be used as plenums for supply or return air. And so all of those 7.1 through 7.5 then go away, right?
Yeah. Right?
Because the
Yes.
new 7 is just the one
7.
sentence, not 7 with 7.1,
No, because it would
7.2.
say it was deleted if it wasn't gonna be there anymore. It'd say that section would be deleted. It's
Well-
not. That's how it's been on the other ones.
Well, she has it on there as hereby repealed and reenacted to read as follows. 'Cause
Right.
When
Who's
you
she?
look at this whole section,
Catherine?
it's one whole section.
So Catherine, is that correct then? That 7 through 7.5 are repealed and only the number 7 will be enacted?
That's how I was told to draft it. Whether that's correct or not, this is the context I can't get into.
Okay.
What do you mean by told? Who told you?
Kathy. I don't, when it comes to building codes, you should know that like the substantive issues that Kathy's going through with you are beyond our knowledge. So, blower doors, things like that. So we take direction from staff on how to draft these ordinances. With the exception of the
No,
administrator.
that's fine.
What-
You said you were told, and I was wondering who gave you that direction,
Staff.
so that we're clear in the future.
So yes, 7.1, 7.2, 7.3, 7.4, 7.5 are all deleted. And only 7 remains.
Correct.
How, Mr.
The new
Mr. Chair?
7, sorry.
Yes.
So this document that says, that started with a memo, and it starts with 101 title,
Correct.
that's referring to this as the 18 code.
Correct.
But it's not really the 18 code, right? It's only the portions of the 18 code that we're going to change.
Correct.
I thought I had a plan, but I don't.
The 18 code or books
Right,
about, yeah.
right, would be huge.
Yeah.
Right,
I think I'm kind of in the same category as Catherine here on this one, that this is way beyond my expertise to, to be passing judgments on cavities for plenums and whether they should or should not be used for air supply.
Well, I think the point is that is one change, am I correct, from our 2006 code? That is a, let's call it change, significant or whatever is another opinion. But the air cavity thing is a change from the 2006.
You just could not, in the 2006, you can't use it for supply air, but you can use it for return air.
Return air, yes.
Correct.
And who decided that it shouldn't be used for return air?
International Code Council, that's how it's wrote in the new code book. You can no longer, what they consider, they call it panning. So a
Right,
lot of
yeah.
people use their floor joists, wrap
Pan it
them.
out, right.
And there's a whole section in the IMC, the IFGC, and the mechanical and the IFGC of the IRC that is, you can no longer pan
Pan.
and use floor joists. And this section here didn't coincide with that section. So that's why this one got changed.
And so, but what you're telling us is that item 7, whatever page that was on that I've now lost, item 7 that said that you could in fact, even though it didn't use the word, but for communication purposes, item 7 said we could pan, and you're saying that that was incorrect
Correct.
with the rest of the 18 code.
Correct. Right now, there's a whole section saying you cannot use floor joists or stud wall cavities as supply and return airs. This section here, they failed to change. So in the code book, if we leave it like it is, the most restrictive shall apply anyhow, so they would still have to comply with the other section. I
Okay.
was just trying to get this section on board with the other
Sure.
section.
I appreciate that. Mr. Chair, I don't, considering the technicalities and I'm kind of like you. I don't know that I'm qualified to sit down and review this document and make for sure that it makes sense, because some of the things that are in here don't make sense, but from a code enforcement, I guess they do make sense. My request would be for time to those of us that have a relationship with contractors, is to get a one-on-one or some personal communication with some contractors and get their feeling. And if the contractors that I know to say, hey, I'm good with that whole process, I'm not gonna sit here and blast my brain with trying to figure out 16.3 and 14.4 over here. That's just frustrating. And it's not frustrating from you. I'm just saying, like you said, the process is very confusing and cross-referencing, so.
And I would add on to that, and I agree with that. I think that sounds like a wise way to go forward. What I would add to that is that I would hope that as, that as Kathy, as you went through this, that if there were things like the 7-foot fence issue, where it says, okay, we're not exempting fences up to 7 foot, we're saying any fence requires a permit. And I would hope that if the 18 code, the Model 18 code permitted something, and we don't want to, and we haven't historically permitted it, I would hope that you could ask why. Why are we doing this? Why are we saying all fences have to be permitted? There could be good reason, and you probably know a lot of them, but that's the only thing that I would hope that happened during this process, because if we get down into the details on here, I truly don't have a way to have an opinion. And we do have to rely on others that
Yeah, that
live and
depth.
die by this stuff.
Yeah. Do we need to go over the permits, though, the permit fees?
The resolution?
Yeah.
We can go through the resolution if you'd like to jump to the resolution. So the first part on the resolution for the permit fees, all of this verbiage is what is in our ordinance right now as far as how we calculate permit fees. If you go to page 3, number C, when it talks about the permit fee multiplier, that there is a change. Right now, our permit fee multiplier is 0.00998, basically 1%. Hoping to increase that to 1.1%. We have not had an increase for 12 years. That has been the same since 2008.
What is that?
The permit fee multiplier?
Yeah.
So if you bring in a house permit,
Okay.
I calculate your square footage off of the building valuation data. Once that is done, then that would tell me your house, let's say for instance, is $250,000. So then you would be charged 1.1% on that $250,000, and that would be the permit fee.
So you're using that .991,
So the current multiplier is 0.998. So it'd be an increase to 1.1%.
where are you seeing that? Help me out here. I thought she said page 3.
Page 3C.
Okay,
It's at the end.
got
This-
it.
Yep.
Multiplier. And why are we increasing that by 0.3%?
Yeah, it's about a 10% increase, and it's, you know, we have not had an increase in permit fees for over 12 years, and trying to make sure that we keep the building revenue for the building department. The building department is one of those city functions where the revenue that they bring in actually pays for themselves. So building department is funded through the fees that they collect. So that, you know, just increases over time. We want to make sure that we at least keep pace with inflation.
But the kicker there is the fact that the cost of goods have gone up with inflation, which in fact is inflation. So if inflation is going down, then your multiplier should go up to keep the expenses the same. But when your cost of goods is going up, you can't increase your multiplier also, or that's a double whammy. Because the 200, or the 150, 1,500 square foot home today is in no way comparison to where it was at 10 years ago. Is that correct? The cost of goods?
Correct?
And the cost of that home has, from 10 years ago to today, the basic cost of that home has gone up substantially. Make sense? So that fee multiplier, I think, is I understand the concept of what you're trying to do, but I think you have to look at the revenue. We come back to the Tabor concepts here of, you know, taxation and mill levies and what have you in terms of keeping those revenues the same. I've said enough.
So just, if I might step, this is not a Tabor issue. Fees are not subject to Tabor. Just so we're clear.
Philosophically,
Do what?
it's a philosophical comparison.
What I just said?
Yeah.
No, it didn't. It's real. You're taking.
No,
No.
fees are not subject to Tabor. Tabor doesn't control
I
fees.
realize that.
Oh, okay, I'm just clarifying to make sure we're on the same page.
Right. And the reason we classify them as fees is so that they're not subject to Tabor. Correct?
No, this is a fee. This is a true fee under the law and not a tax. This does not have the characteristics of a tax as the law defines a tax.
Thank you.
But
I
it's,
feel better.
the theoretical comparison is still true. And so Ryan, is the building department falling behind then in revenues compared to what's needed, or?
Well, I think, you know, Kathy mentioned earlier some of the staffing issues and, you know, making sure that we have enough manpower to keep up with some of the activity that we've had over time. And, you know, certainly that's something that we want to make sure that we're addressing, and, you know, would like to see the building department continue to be one of the departments that does pay it for itself through its activities.
We do want them to be responsive and be able to respond in a timely manner to the different requests that the builders have. You know, and unfortunately, another way to look at this is that these are, as we increase regulations, the regulatory burden increases. And the people required to, you know, monitor those regulations and enforce them, that burden increases. So you're exactly right. Inflation is accounted for in the cost of goods, but in this case, because we really are increasing regulation. At least that's the way I look at it. I'm not sure that whether you agree or not, but it seems to me that that's part of what we're doing is we're writing more and more rules that require more support.
So Ryan, I had asked you before this meeting to have a comparison to other communities similar to ours on what their fees are, and what are some of the fees of other communities? Kathy, do we know?
Yeah, Kathy did some of that research. Do you mind sharing some of that?
If I can remember, Pueblos are a lot higher. They calculate theirs different. Salidas are, actually, I think their multiplier is over 2%. I'm trying to remember. Colorado Springs is higher, and we have to stop and remember, we do not charge inspection fees like a lot of people charge, let's say, $2,000 compared to our $2,500 permit, but they charge an inspection fee of $65 each time you call for an inspection. So that's an added on and beyond. So we're pretty much comparable. Salida, I believe, is higher than us now. Not sure about Pikes Peak Regional.
What we can do is put together a table
Yeah.
of what those fees are and send those to council.
City of Trinidad, we're pretty comparable. And City of Pueblo, we're pretty comparable.
I would like to see those numbers.
Well, the other side that goes with that is, so when I pay my building, my inspection, we already know that there are a specific number of inspections that have to happen, right?
Correct.
And that's how you're determining this cost, is the fact that I'm going to need, based upon what I'm doing, I could have 4 inspections that are required.
Yeah, in this case here, usually on a house, because smaller permits, roofs, they're smaller in fees. You're gonna have 2 inspections, at the most 3 inspections with the roof. With a house, we might have 10 to 12 inspections. Because there's always re-inspections on several occasions. In commercial projects, there's inspections even go at a higher rate.
So under your current process, you charge 1 fee for the permit and includes all of the inspections.
Correct.
I would hope we would refrain from having a process that charges for additional inspections or charges for a re-inspection.
We do. We've always had in the resolution, and you'll see on the next page, I believe it is, that there is an inspection fee on, and there's also a re-inspection fee. We have never charged any of those. They've been in our code.
I think if they're in the code and you're not using them, you take them out. The problem I have with a re-inspection fee is, it's in the inspector or the supervisor's best interest to fail the inspection, to generate revenue, to balance the budget. And that fundamental concept is not good business. So you have a fee structure that minimizes that complication.
The only time that that re-inspection fee has even been thought about using is when we'd have to go out on the same inspection 5 or 6 times. That's what the re-inspection fee amount is.
Well, if you're going to have a re-inspection fee, and there's a practical application in terms of the 4th time, then that's what we need to say so everybody understands, that when we get to the 4th re-inspection, we're going to charge. But some of those things, it's an opportunity here to clear it up,
Okay.
I think.
I agree. If it's in the books and we're not applying it, then we need to take it out.
Yeah, I mean, if you're trying to do good customer service and not charge for a re-inspection, which I appreciate, that's fine. But if there's a point where with some contractors, where you need to give them a little bump there, then put that language in here and saying, on the 3rd re-inspection or on the 4th re-inspection, you're subject to a re-inspection fee. And then stick to it.
I think we could make that adjustment.
And on the 1.1%, would you like to stay at the same amount as we are right now?
Well, what I would like to see is, I would like to see, even though I've got a budget book, I mean, how much is the building and department losing every year? And if the building department, under current staffing, because we've had a huge increase in the number of building permits, according to the information that's been given to council, I would think currently, without changing in staffing requirements, and a huge increase in the number of building permits that are issued, the building department should be operating in the black, I would think, but I don't know.
And the issue there may be that where the give and take in that equation is that if you have a big increase in building fees and number of permits or whatever, the staff can still only do so much work. And so what happens is you may be in the black, but you're not getting good customer service, because if you look at a aging table, in other words, how long it's taken for the city to act on a permit, that can lengthen under that scenario. Even though you may be in the black, you got a lot of money coming in, you still don't have staff to cover all the stuff you need to do, and so people don't get the inspections they need on the times that they need it.
So basically, we need some more thorough justification for rising
Yeah, I mean, that's the bottom line, is that
the fees.
if we have to increase that a very small percentage to 1.1, and it's justified, then that's fine. But just what seems to be an adjustment here in a document that's intended to improve the whole building code thing, I find suspicious, and with all due respect. It just is the wrong place to ask for a price increase. Probably should be done on the budget process.
And normally, this would be done, it would be included within the ordinance itself, correct, Kathy?
Yes.
When you update the
Building code.
building code. So we've pulled it out as a resolution separately, because most of our fees and fee schedules are done via resolution. So that's part of the reason why you're seeing it separately here.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the same subject matter, so I can see that. All right, page 4, or is there anything else on page 3? You just want to get all the justifications first? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, we can sit here for another 3 hours, and I'm not going to accomplish anything from my standpoint.
Well, on page 4, there's a list of, $100, $50. Are
Oh, you're
these-
talking about fees.
Yeah.
Yeah, is that the same,
Yeah,
or are those also?
there are some
increased?
changes there, Kathy, you want to go through those,
Number
please?
A, inspections outside of normal business hours. Right now, the minimum charge for 2 hours is $50 per hour. The reason I was trying to change that to $200 per hour is because we're having a lot of roofers that want weekend inspections, and they are offering to pay the $100, which doesn't cover the cost of the time for somebody to come out and do it on a Saturday or a Sunday for overtime.
Weekend inspections on roofs should be a top priority for the city. We should do everything we can to make for sure that any contractor has an inspector available. And if there's a reasonable cost associated, we need to do that. But to not have building, particularly roof inspections on weekends, is crazy. Personal opinion.
So there is a justification.
Yeah, I mean, if they want to pay the $100 to get somebody out there, fine.
It would cost them $200. It's a minimum
Min-
2-hour
Minimum
charge.
charge, 2 hours. That's from 100. It's 100 now, it would go to, under this, it would go to 200.
Correct.
It's a 2-hour minimum. So that's the $100 per hour, but it's a 2-hour minimum.
I thought it was $50 an hour now.
Right
It
now,
is.
it's $50 an hour, minimum 2-hour.
That's $100.
Yep.
Yes.
So this would go up to $200.
I would also like to see what other communities are doing.
Theirs are more, actually.
There are more? Well, then that's what I want to know.
Yeah, but I think Pueblo's is $150 minimum 2-hour charge, which is $300.
Yeah, we'll put all of that into a table for you.
Reinspection fees, again, that's, would you like to see, I would say fourth inspection after
I
the
don't know.
fourth
I
inspection?
mean, that's an area that you've got a better feel than I do. I mean, if you're, at what point do you professionally say, you're not listening, so you need to pay? I mean, that's what we're saying.
Correct. And then the inspections for which no fee is specifically indicated, that's not changed, that's the same. Plan review fees are new for residential. Most building departments charge 65% of the permit fee to do a plan review fee for new residential homes. I thought maybe it would be best to start out very light at a $150 fee, plan review fee for new residents. Additional plan review required by changes, additions, or revisions to plans, that's been in the code, that hasn't changed. For use of outside consultants, checking inspections or both, that's actual cost. That's in the code. Fence permit fee is not in there, and neither is the demo permit fee. Right now, the fence permit fee are done per the percentage, which a lot of them want to tell you that it's only $500 for them to put up a fence that's going to cost $2,500 just for the materials. So I thought maybe it would be best to do a flat fee for a fence permit. Right now, demo permits, we actually charge nothing for a demo permit right now. Most jurisdictions charge anywhere from $300 to $500 for a demo permit. I was hoping $75 for a demo permit, just a flat fee. The mechanical permit fee schedule, the schedule that we used before, was per equipment. It was based off of the 94 IMC, which is the Uniform Mechanical Code. I have restructured the fee under just a mechanical fee schedule. Many jurisdictions adopt this schedule here, and it makes it a whole lot easier than people trying to figure out which piece of equipment that they have. As far as fee refunds, none of that has changed. It's the same. And the annual revisions on page 5 is to the permit fee multiplier that should be looked at every year at the end of the year. None of that has changed from the previous ordinance. Questions, concerns?
I think, yeah, just, in general, just, we just talked about the justification and the comparison, and I think that'll be helpful for us in making good decisions.
I think the other thing is on that item C, would be interesting to see what I don't know, I'm gonna pick 5 of your last homes that you've done. If you did a percentage on those versus a flat fee. And I would want to see different sizes of homes.
Okay, so if I do the 65% on a plan review fee of a building permit, most generally, the building permits range from $2,500 to $4,000. So it'd be 65% of that. So you're talking about a $700 fee, more than likely.
Okay, back up. Explain that again.
So
You
the
don't
way
have
most
to charge
building
65%.
departments work, a plan review fee, if your permit fee for your actual permit is $2,500,
Okay,
you would take 65% of that $2,500, and that would be your plan review fee on top of your building permit fee.
who determines the 65%?
We do.
Why did you choose 65%?
I didn't choose 65%.
Well, why don't you take 5%?
I'm choosing a flat fee.
Okay,
I'm not choosing any percent, because if we do a percent, it's gonna look like they're paying anywhere from $500 to $750
Only,
for a plan review.
only if you use a big percentage.
What Kathy was saying, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the 65% are typical of other jurisdictions.
Correct.
But that doesn't mean that has to be what we charge.
Right.
It just seems more simple to,
Well, would you say that a 1,100 square foot home, it requires the same effort and time as a 1,800 square home?
Yes.
At what point does that change?
It changes because you're still going through every bit of the process, whether it's a 2,500 square foot home or whether it's a 1,000 square foot home. You're still going through the same process. Plan review, if I can sit down with a residential plan with, let's say, just on a crawl space without a basement, which most, I would say, right now, 80 to 90% are all crawl spaces. You're looking at anywhere from 4 to 6 hours plan review time.
So we're not punishing somebody for building a bigger house or rewarding somebody for building a smaller house,
Correct.
correct?
it's just a consistent,
Yeah.
easy, flat.
Yeah, it's
fee.
just a flat fee.
So, if you're spending 6 to 4, how many hours are you
4 to
spending?
6.
Is this $150 relative to that 4 to 6 hours?
I'm sure it helps a little bit to pay for my time.
Well, there needs to be some relevance between the amount of time that you're spending on the average permit and the fee that we're gonna charge. I mean, if you're spending 6 to 4 hours and your man-hour cost in that department is $100, it needs to be $400, or whatever that equates to, in terms of the number of hours that we're spending, versus just trying to get a trickle back. We're trying to be realistic and practical and not charge any more than we need to, but if that's the amount of time that it takes, it seems like that's what we should be charging, if in fact we're trying to get the building department to, on a break-even basis.
Correct,
She wanted a soft start, because this is a new fee.
correct.
Okay, scratch all that.
Certainly look at it if council wants us to look at that.
Baby steps.
Well, the
Sound
problem
good.
with soft fees is that in 3 years, you look at the fee and you say, whoever came up with that crazy fee, it should be $600. And then that council at that point in time have got to make the decision to adjust a fee that the previous council should have never set. And if $150 is not practical and realistic relative to the real costs that we've got associated with a task, then don't do it.
Well, we can take a look at the plan review fee and make sure that we're covering costs.
I mean, if we want to stagger it in, then we say, okay, this year's $150, next year's $300, and then the next year's $550. But don't start low, knowing that it's completely out of hand, and just leave it. We've been dealing with that for the last 5 years, and I'm tired of it.
Another way to say that, I think, is that it would be good if there's an average time for
Right.
review, and our average, if our time is $50 an hour, seems to be borne out by then that equation, or that, a documentation would be good to have in the resolution, so that future people can
Yeah.
say, oh, well, average time was 3.5 hours, $50 an hour, and whatever that comes out to be,
Right.
And actually, $50 an hour is pretty accurate for, if you go back and do some of the calculations, $50 an hour is.
Good.
I mean, the same concept applies to, if you got a $400 fee that you can't justify, then you drop it to $150. But whatever fees you have that are relative to expenses, they need to be related to actual expenses. So that, I can tell John Doe that that's our cost for doing that.
So having some basis for the fees would be good for our next go-round.
Yeah. All right.
This is scheduled to come to council in November, so we've got a little bit of time to make some adjustments, and if you do have questions as you review it or talk to contractors, please let me know, and we'll get you some answers.
All right. Thanks,
That'd be
Kathy.
great. If
Thank
there's no other business,
Appreciate your grilling, or my grilling, or something.
we're adjourned.
Your
Yes,
patience.
thank you for this. Thank you for what you've done, because you have put a lot of work into this, and we do appreciate that.
Thank you